not have known about Evil Dead 2. Some consider this to be a remake of Evil Dead 1, but according to Sam Raimi, that's not true. The opening scenes just had to be reshot because the rights couldn't be obtained to use the shots from the original. The reason for using all the different colors for the blood is they was trying to stay away from the X rating, which they still receive, so they just released it unrated. I know I've talked about this before, but I'll never not talk about it. Freddy's glove makes a cameo in the Chainsaw Shed. If it wasn't for Stephen King, this movie probably wouldn't have got made. Raimi was having problems finding the funding. King was just so impressed with the original that he talked Dino De Laurentiis into financing the film, who he was working with on Maximum Overdrive at the time. The entire Ash versus his possessed hand bit was all improvised by Bruce Campbell, and it was shot in just one take. Things you may not have known about American Werewolf in London. John Landis has said that he first had the idea when he was 18 years old, working on a production in Yugoslavia. He'd witnessed the man's funeral where he was buried feet first and wrapped in garlic, so that he couldn't rise from the dead. The studio wanted to cast Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi in the main roles, but Landis pushed back, wanting fresh faces. He did, however, give a free screening of the Blues Brothers to the local police department in London, helping him to get shots of Piccadilly Circus. The final look of the werewolf is heavily based off Rick Baker's personal pup, Keyshound named Bosco. The British Office of Actors' Equity questioned the necessity to grant a work permit to Griffin Dunne, saying there were plenty of American actors living in London. They quickly changed their mind when Landis threatened to rewrite the script and call it American Werewolf in Paris. Here's a few things you may not have known about Total Recall. Pretty much the entire crew was wrecked with food poisoning from the Mexico City shoots. Except for Arnie, of course, who had learned his lesson during the making of Predator, so had all his food and drink shipped from the U.S. David Cronenberg was signed on as the original director, but he ended up leaving the project due to disagreements on how the story needed to be told. He basically wanted to stick a little closer to the original short story that the movie's based off of. This movie was a part of a couple of big milestones in effects evolution, being one of the last big-budget movies to utilize the miniature effects, and one of the first movies to use CGI. After finding out that Michael Ironside's sister was battling cancer during production, Arnold halted everything just to have an hour-long three-way conversation with Ironside and his sister, giving her fitness and food advice that may help her through her battle. I just think that's awesome.
See you at the party, Richter.
Here's a few things you may not have known about Christine. An interesting difference between the book and the film is that in the movie, Christine is evil from the get-go, even killing a guy on the assembly line. Whereas in the book, she's just a normal car until she's purchased by Roland LeVay, the brother of the old man who sold Arnie the car. It was Roland's unnatural love for the car and general douchebaggery that fused his evil spirit with Christine. The movie was shot in the same neighborhood that Carpenter used for Halloween. The origins of the name Christine come from Christine Romero, wife of George Romero at the time, who King was working with on Creepshow when he had the idea for the novel. Kevin Bacon was offered a role in the movie, but he took the lead role to Footloose instead.
Okay. Show me.
Here's a few things you may not have known about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The opening narration is done by John Larroquette, who I grew up knowing from Night Court. He said one time in an interview for his payment he got one joint. The dinner scene used real rotting meat and real rotten food, and they were shooting in like over 110-degree heat. A few of the cast members would have to stop before takes and run outside and throw up before coming back in and start shooting again. It was also said between the heat and the grueling shooting schedules, which they would sometimes shoot for up to 27 hours straight, that some of the actors would suffer genuine sanity slippage. Gunnar Hansen even admitted he genuinely wanted to kill Marilyn Burns in one of the scenes. This movie actually holds a special place with me, being my first ever movie jump scare.